When Emma gives birth to her son 8 weeks early, she expects a fragile but sacred time of bonding and vigilance. Instead, she walks into the NICU one night to find him crying alone, untouched, and ignored. The horror of that moment is only the beginning. Her partner, Jordan, had been distant for months, but now his indifference turns into something more sinister. With the trauma of a high-risk pregnancy behind her, Emma finds herself in a new battle, for her son's safety, for the truth behind Jordan's behavior, and for full custody. As Emma peels back layers of secrets from medical neglect to emotional betrayal, she begins to understand just how much danger they've both been in, and how far she's willing to go to protect her child. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and sterile dread. Emma's footsteps echoed through the dimly lit corridor of the NICU, her heart pounding louder with each step. It was just past midnight. Her body still sore, her stitches pulling slightly with every movement. She shouldn't have been walking at all, but something had pulled her from her bed, some strange intuition, some force deeper than pain or exhaustion. And then she heard a cry, sharp, hollow, piercing. It was her son. Her body froze. She was sure of it. She knew his cry now, fragile, high-pitched, with a tremble that sliced through her chest like glass. Her legs carried her before she could think. Room 3B. Her baby's isolate. Her baby Mason. Alone. Tears were pouring down his tiny, flushed cheeks. His arms flailed, searching. No nurse, no aid. Not even a glance through the window. The machines beeped lazily around him as if time wasn't fractured in that moment. Emma stumbled forward, scooping him up despite the wires and the rules. She pressed him to her chest. His body was trembling. She whispered, "Mommy's here. I'm here. I'm so sorry." And then came the sound of footsteps. A nurse mid-30s, expression blank, clipboard in hand, paused at the door. "You're not supposed to pick him up without assistance," she said flatly. Emma didn't even look up. How long was he crying? Silence. The nurse blinked. I just stepped away. You left a premature baby, my son, crying alone." The nurse's jaw tightened. "He's stable." "Sometimes babies cry." Emma's voice rose, hoarse and furious. "He is not supposed to cry alone. He is supposed to be touched, held. He's 8 weeks early. Where were you?" "I'll call the charge nurse." "Do that." Emma stayed, holding Mason, her hospital gown open at the chest to give him skin-to-skin contact. She didn't care what rules she broke. She didn't care who saw. Her mind spiraled. This wasn't the first time something felt off. The day before, the fourth had been incorrectly placed, and 2 nights ago, Jordan Mason's father had said something that stuck with her. "They're professionals. Stop being dramatic, Em." No, she wasn't being dramatic. She had carried this baby through hemorrhages, bedrest, and terror. She had felt him fight to stay alive inside her, and now, she watched a nurse walk away from his isolate as if he were nothing but another task undone. By morning, Emma had made a decision. She wheeled herself to the administrative floor. Mason, asleep against her chest in a wrap. Her voice didn't shake. Her back stayed straight. "I want to file a formal complaint about the overnight NICU staff. And I want a copy of every observation note on my son's file from the past 48 hours. The woman at the desk glanced up, startled. I'll get the supervisor." "Do that," Emma repeated, with the same chilling clarity she had used with the nurse. But when she called Jordan to tell him what had happened, expecting anger, solidarity, anything, his voice was tired, detached. "You're overreacting." That was when she knew. Something in her broke. Not just about the NICU, not just about the cry, but about him. That night, she sat in the recliner beside Mason's isolate and opened a private browser window on her phone. She searched for a family law attorney. She took a screenshot. She saved the number. She had been fighting for Mason since before he was born. Now, she would fight for him with the law. The next morning, before the sun rose, she filed the paperwork for full custody. And that's when the secrets started to unravel. Because Jordan wasn't just indifferent, he was hiding something. Something that would shatter everything she thought she knew about their little family. Emma had barely slept. Every time her eyes closed, she saw Mason's face, red, panicked, desperate. The sound of his cry had carved itself into her memory like a brand. But she didn't have the luxury of rest. The hospital's legal department had been surprisingly silent after her complaint. Too silent, which only made her more determined. Jordan arrived at 8:17 a.m., exactly when he always did. He carried his usual black coffee and a bagel he wouldn't finish. He didn't look like a father visiting his son in the NICU. He looked like a man on his way to a boring meeting. Casual, distracted, phone in hand. Emma watched him walk in, eyes glazed over, barely looking at Mason before muttering, "Hey, little guy." She kept her voice low. "He cried for over 10 minutes last night. Alone. No one came." Jordan glanced at her, unmoved. "Didn't you already report it?" "That's not the point." He sighed, took a bite of the bagel, and sat in the corner. No skin to skin, no question about how Mason was doing. Just silence and scrolling. Emma turned away. She couldn't look at him. Later that afternoon, when he stepped out to take a call, he left his phone on the windowsill. Emma didn't intend to look. She told herself she wouldn't. But something about the way he said, "I'll handle it," right before the door closed, that tone, that detachment. It set something off inside her. His phone wasn't locked. She hesitated for just one breath, then picked it up. Recent texts. A name she didn't recognize. Carly. The first message. She's spiraling again. "I can't do this much longer." Her chest tightened. "Carly, you said she'd calm down after the baby." Jordan. "Well, I was wrong. And now she wants full custody." "Carly, maybe it's for the best. He's not even sure it's his." Emma's throat closed. She stared at the screen, willing the words to change. Her hands trembled. He told someone she didn't even know that Mason might not be his. He had doubts. Doubts he never voiced to her. He had shared them with Carly, whoever that was. And he was making her look unstable. The door opened. Emma shoved the phone back just in time. Jordan walked in, casual. "Everything okay?" She stared at him. Really looked not at the man she had loved once, but at the stranger in front of her. "Who's Carly?" she asked. He blinked, caught. "She's someone I work with." Emma said nothing. "You went through my phone. You left it there." He shrugged, sat back down. "I didn't think I needed to lock it." For the first time, she realized just how much he underestimated her. How comfortable he had become with secrets. How little fear he had of being exposed. She left the room, went straight to the lactation lounge, and broke down. Silent sobs. Mason's feeding tube had just been adjusted again. She was pumping milk on a schedule that stole her sleep, her time, her sanity. And Jordan was texting another woman about how she was the problem. But the pain gave her clarity. When she returned, she said, "I talked to an attorney this morning." Jordan froze. "What? Family law? I'm filing for emergency custody?" "You're overreacting." Emma nodded slowly. "That's what you always say. But here's what you don't understand. You think my silence is weakness. It's not, it's calculation." He laughed, actually laughed. "You think a judge is going to side with you. You're emotional. You just gave birth." She leaned in. "Exactly. I gave birth. I didn't disappear. I didn't lie. And I damn sure didn't leave my premature son crying in a glass box while I texted my coworker." He said nothing. Emma turned, picked up her things, and kissed Mason's forehead. By the time she reached the elevator, her phone buzzed. A message from her lawyer. "Got the documents. We'll file this afternoon. You're doing the right thing." But as the doors closed, she saw Jordan through the glass window, staring at her with a look she hadn't seen before. Not anger, fear, and she knew he had something to hide. Something deeper than texts. Something that might explain why Mason's IV was botched. Why he never seemed present. Why he kept pushing the idea that she was spiraling. Because if he was afraid, then there was more. And she was going to find out exactly what it was. 2 days passed. Emma barely left the hospital. Her body was healing, but her mind was sharp, suspicious, wide awake. Every beep of the monitor, every shuffle of paper outside Mason's room set her on edge. She had memorized every nurse's face, every change of shift, and she had started to notice things. Nurse Patel, sweet and efficient, was gone. Replaced suddenly with a float nurse named Dana who avoided eye contact. Mason's chart showed inconsistencies, feedings logged minutes apart. Weights recorded that didn't align with his actual growth. Emma kept her mouth shut and started taking photos of everything. His feed amounts, the monitor readings, even his diaper logs. The more she documented, the more she felt the weight of something deeply wrong. It wasn't just neglect. It was like someone wanted her to look unstable, to seem paranoid. She had almost convinced herself it was all in her head until she overheard a conversation near the staff lounge. She asked about the 4 again. One voice whispered, "Did you tell her what happened?" Another replied, "No, she's already filing complaints." We don't need a lawsuit. Emma froze, her breath caught in her throat. She leaned closer to the wall. She's watching everything. Writing things down. Even taking pictures. A pause. Then, we shouldn't have taken orders from him. He's not even listed as a medical proxy. Her knees buckled. Taken orders from him. Emma waited until the voices faded, then slipped back into the NICU room, hands trembling. Mason was asleep, his tiny fists balled up under his chin. She sat beside him and didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just stared at him and whispered, "They've been doing what he told them to do, haven't they?" That afternoon, she called the lawyer again. "Can I subpoena hospital footage?" "Only if there's a formal case opened," he said, carefully, "but Emma... Are you saying someone inside is interfering with your son's care?" "Yes," she whispered. "I think his father is manipulating the staff. And I think they're covering for him." The lawyer paused. "Then we may need more than a custody filing. We may need to talk to a medical advocate." As if on cue, Emma received a visit that evening from a NICU social worker named Marianne. Middle-aged, composed, clipboard in hand. "I hear you've had concerns about Mason's treatment?" she said politely. Emma nodded. "I want to make sure you're getting the support you need. Sometimes mothers experience heightened anxiety post-delivery, especially after premature birth." There it was. The subtle gaslighting, polished, professional. "I'm not anxious. I'm alert," Emma replied, matching her tone. Marianne offered a vague smile. "Your partner mentioned some emotional strain. He's worried about your stress levels." Emma's stomach turned. "He said that to you?" "He's just concerned." That night, Emma waited until the hallway was quiet. She stopped Nurse Dana on her way out. "Can I ask you something? Just off the record." Dana hesitated. "Depends. Did Jordan tell you not to touch Mason unless he cried for at least 5 minutes? Dana blinked, frozen. Emma leaned in. "I heard your voice, outside the lounge. I know he's been influencing care." Dana looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "He told the staff you had episodes, that you wanted to overhandle Mason. He said you were recovering from postpartum psychosis." Emma's mouth fell open. "What?" He made it sound medical, like he had papers. Most of us didn't know what to believe. We followed the notes. We were told to limit stimulation unless approved by both parents, but I'm the only one listed. I'm the sole proxy." Dana nodded slowly. "Then something's wrong with the chart." The world tilted. Emma sat down. "Can you print a copy? Of his full care history?" Dana hesitated again. "If I do this, I could lose my job." Emma looked up, voice steady. "And if you don't, my son could lose his chance to develop safely. You heard him cry. You saw what happened." Dana took a deep breath. "I'll email it to you, from a private server. Give me till morning." Emma nodded, heart racing. "Thank you." At 3:14 a.m., her phone buzzed. An email. No subject. Inside was a PDF. Mason's chart showed a modified note, entered a week earlier. Parental direction. Avoid stimulation unless approved by both parents. Infant oversoothed, per paternal report. Monitor for maternal instability. It was signed with a staff code, but Jordan had no medical authority. And whoever entered that note... had falsified a record. Emma stared at the screen, rage rising in her throat like fire. He hadn't just lied. He had planted a narrative. One designed to make her look dangerous, and it was working, because the next morning, when she arrived at the NICU, she wasn't allowed in. The nurse at the front desk didn't even look Emma in the eye. "I'm sorry, but you've been temporarily restricted from NICU access pending a wellness evaluation," she said, her tone rehearsed, distant. Emma blinked, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. "I'm his mother. I have legal authority." "Who made this decision?" "The attending physician and NICU administration, based on documentation in the medical file. It's a precaution. A psychiatric evaluation is being requested." Emma's vision blurred. "This is retaliation," she whispered. "I filed a complaint. I've documented everything." The nurse looked uncomfortable but said nothing more. Emma stepped back, trying to breathe. Behind the double doors was her son, fragile, alone. And on the other side of the glass, she stood powerless. For the first time, she realized this wasn't just Jordan's doing. It had escalated. It was systemic now. It had a paper trail. She called her lawyer immediately. "They've locked me out. They're saying I need a psyche veil to see my own son." A long pause on the other end. "Then, we need to escalate." I'm filing an emergency motion for access. And you need to go to your OB today, get a clean psychiatric evaluation. Immediately, we'll use it in court. Emma didn't waste a second. She got in a rideshare to her clinic, her hands shaking. Every minute away from Mason felt like a betrayal. Like she was failing him. Her OB, Dr. Kim, was appalled. You've shown no signs of postpartum psychosis. I've never submitted anything of the sort. This is a misuse of medical protocol. Emma could barely focus as Dr. Kim wrote up a formal letter stating her mental health was stable, her behavior appropriate, her parental instincts strong. She signed it, stamped it. That night, Emma returned to her apartment for the first time. In a week, it felt like a crime scene. Quiet, eerie, staged. She looked around at the things Jordan had once insisted on buying, baby items still in boxes, an expensive monitor still unopened. Why had he been so detached during the pregnancy, yet so controlling now? The answer came from her phone. A message from Dana, the NICU nurse. Check the chart again, not just the care notes. Look at the visitor logs. Something's wrong. Emma accessed the hospital portal with her patient login. It took minutes of scrolling, digging, trying to access buried pages until she found what Dana meant. Visitor logs. Jordan had logged visits late at night long after Emma had gone to sleep. Times she knew he was supposed to be working. 3, sometimes 4 times a night. And some of those logs had notes beside them. Father requested feeding delay for maternal bonding balance. Father instructed staff to limit maternal interaction due to anxiety episodes. Emma's breath left her body. He had been framing her methodically using hospital language, cloaked in concern. Writing himself in as the stable parent while slowly dismantling her. Access, she called Dana again. How was he getting this in the chart? He's not listed, he has no proxy. Dana's voice was hushed. One of the residents vouched for him, said there was a secondary directive filed. I didn't see it myself, but he must have known someone. Emma paced the room. I need names, dates, anything. This is abuse. Dana hesitated. I'll send what I can, but be careful. They're circling the wagons. People are scared. As Emma sat down, her lawyer called back. We got the hearing scheduled. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., bring the doctor's letter and every file you've saved. We'll present your documentation. Emma nodded, her voice hoarse. What are the chances I'll get Mason back? We're filing for immediate reinstatement of access and emergency sole custody. You have evidence, but you need to prepare. He'll show up looking calm, rational. You need to be stronger than his version of you. Emma sat in the dark. Across the room, Mason's empty crib waited. She opened her laptop and printed everything, the photos, the chart notes, the visitor logs. Each page was a wound. Each page was also a weapon. She would walk into that courtroom not just as a mother but as a witness. But what she didn't know yet was that Jordan's secrets were deeper than anyone suspected. Because the next morning, outside the courthouse, someone she hadn't seen in years was waiting to speak with her. A woman holding a file folder. I'm Jordan's ex-fiancée, she said, and you need to know what he did before. Emma stood frozen on the courthouse steps, sunlight blinding and surreal. The woman looked older than her photos online, but her voice held no hesitation. I'm Lily, Jordan's ex-fiancée, and I have documentation you're going to want to see. Emma's stomach dropped. How did you know I'd be here? I've been following your custody filing. I never thought I'd get involved again, but when I saw your name, and your baby, I couldn't stay silent. She handed Emma a manila folder, thick with papers, yellowed receipts, and screenshots. Emma opened it. Hospital bills. From 6 years ago. Same hospital, different baby. Lily's baby. His name was Caleb. Lily said softly. He died when he was 3 weeks old. Premature. Jordan said it was nature's way. But after it happened, I started asking questions. He shut me out, and then he disappeared. Emma's throat tightened. Are you saying? I'm saying what happened to Caleb was never fully explained. He had feeding complications. Missed alerts. I never got full access to the records. Jordan said the doctors handled everything. But later I found this. Lily pulled out a folded note, crumpled and worn. A care directive. Limit stimulation. Avoid skin-to-skin due to maternal distress. The handwriting was different, but the wording was almost identical to what Emma had just found in Mason's chart. Did you show this to anyone? I tried, but by then, Jordan had already left. He ghosted me. The staff chalked it up to miscommunication and grief. I never got answers. I thought maybe it was me. Until I saw your son's name in that NICU. Emma's pulse pounded in her ears. He's done this before, she whispered. Lily nodded. He manipulates medical systems. He uses concern as a weapon. You need to dig deeper. Ask for internal logs. He knows someone on the inside, he always does. Emma stared at the folder. She could barely speak. Thank you, she said at last. You didn't have to come. I did, Lily replied. Because if you don't stop him, he'll do it again, and someone else's baby won't make it. Inside the courtroom, Jordan was already seated calm, confident, wearing a crisp navy suit. He looked like a grieving father under pressure. His expression was neutral, almost saintly. Emma sat across from him, holding her folder like armor. The judge, a woman in her 60s, entered and glanced through the initial reports. Emma's lawyer rose first. Your Honor, we are requesting immediate reinstatement of the mother's access to her premature son, Mason, who is currently hospitalized. We have evidence of misinformation submitted to hospital staff, coordinated manipulation of medical records, and a pattern of emotional abuse from the father. Jordan's attorney stood. Your Honor, we dispute these claims. My client has only acted in the best interest of the child. The mother has displayed erratic behavior and has a documented history of postpartum anxiety. Emma's heart pounded, but she stood. I have no such history. I have a signed statement from my physician confirming that. What I do have is a copy of falsified notes entered into my son's medical chart notes, suggesting I was unstable, when in fact I was the only listed medical proxy. She handed the judge her file. Further, I have documentation from another woman, Jordan's former fiancé, whose premature son died under nearly identical circumstances. The same type of language used. The same manipulation. Jordan shifted. The judge read silently, then looked up. These are serious allegations. I will need time to review, but based on the materials presented and in the interest of the child's welfare, I am granting temporary full access to the mother and ordering an independent review of the hospital's NICU records. Emma exhaled. Jordan didn't move, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. For the first time, panic. Outside the courtroom, Lily hugged her. Don't stop, even if they try to wear you down. Even if he plays the victim. Emma nodded. I won't. But the victory was brief, because when she returned to the hospital, that night with her reinstatement papers, Mason's room was empty. The nurse looked up in surprise. He's not here anymore. He was discharged this afternoon. Emma froze. What do you mean? Discharged to who? The nurse checked the system. Father signed him out at 3:12 p.m. Emma's world collapsed. Jordan had taken Mason, and no one had stopped him. Emma stood, frozen in the NICU hallway, the paper in her hand trembling. She reread the timestamp over and over. Discharged, 3:12 p.m. Custodial parent, Jordan. Thomas authorized release. Verified by internal proxy file. This isn't possible, she said aloud. The nurse looked at her, confused. It was all cleared through administration. His name was on the updated file. There was no updated file. I have sole authority. That discharge wasn't legal. Emma didn't wait. She stormed down the hall, heart in her throat. Every second that passed felt like a lifetime. Her body was still healing, her legs weak, but adrenaline kept her upright at the front desk. She demanded a supervisor. 15 minutes later, she was seated in a small office with a compliance officer. She showed her custody papers, her reinstatement order, the physician's letter. Then she said what no one wanted to hear. You released my premature son into the custody of someone who falsified medical documents. I want access to every login record, every staff note, every surveillance clip from today. The officer paled. We'll need legal clearance to provide. Emma slammed the file onto the desk. You had enough clearance to hand over my child without verification. I'm not leaving without answers. It took hours. Phone calls, her lawyer returning with a court clerk, a hastily filed emergency petition for enforcement. Finally, just after midnight, the hospital produced the sign-out sheet. Emma's hands shook as she read it. The signature wasn't Jordan's, it was someone else's, illegible, but next to it, a staff ID number. She took a photo. Then the video was pulled surveillance from 3:04 p.m. to 3:16 p.m. Emma leaned in, heart pounding. There he was. Jordan, in jeans and a gray hoodie, Face down, carrying a car seat, no Mason inside it yet. He approached a nurse one Emma didn't recognize. They spoke briefly. Papers were exchanged. Then Jordan was escorted into the NICU, returning minutes later with Mason, now bundled and sleeping. He left without fanfare. No hesitation. Like he'd done it 100 times. Emma stared at the footage, the quiet theft of her child unfolding in sterile color. "Who's that nurse?" she asked. The compliance officer typed quickly. "Tempire. Filled in from a private staffing agency. Not part of our regular rotation. Get me her name now." Emma's lawyer leaned close. "He's running." He knew he was losing. "He's not just running," Emma said. "He planned this." At 2 a.m., Emma sat in her car outside the hospital. She hadn't cried. Not once. She couldn't afford it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. "I heard what happened," a woman's voice said. "I don't want to get involved, but I think you need to know Jordan's staying at his brother's cabin, near Henderson Ridge. That's where he took the other baby too." Emma's breath caught. "Who is this?" Click. The call ended. Emma stared into the darkness. Her hands clenched the steering wheel. She called the police, filed a report for unlawful removal of a dependent. But they warned her it would take time. No active warrant unless Mason was in immediate danger. And Emma knew by the time they acted, it could be too late. She didn't go home. She went to her sister's house, picked up a bag, and drove through the night. As dawn broke over the hills near Henderson Ridge, Emma pulled up outside a cabin, half hidden in the trees. There was a car in the driveway, and a baby monitor visible through the front window. Emma didn't knock. She walked to the door and banged hard. Footsteps inside. Then Jordan's voice. "You shouldn't be here. I'm not leaving without my son. You don't get to make that call anymore. I never stopped making it." She stepped back, ready to scream, ready to call the police again. Then she saw him, Mason, in a carrier, sleeping, too still. And something about his color, his silence, made her blood run cold. "What did you give him?" Jordan's expression flickered. "I said, he's fine." Emma moved toward the door. Heart racing. Then the sound of a click, metal against wood. He'd locked it from the inside. Ma stood on the porch, fists clenched, the morning air sharp in her lungs. Inside the cabin, Jordan hovered near the baby carrier. Mason still hadn't moved. Emma's instincts screamed. "What did you give him?" she repeated, louder this time. Jordan tilted his head, trying for calm, but the edges of his expression cracked. He was overstimulated at the hospital. He needs rest. You don't get to sedate a baby. It's not sedation, it's melatonin. Just a little. Natural. Emma felt her chest tighten. He's premature. You can't give him anything without a doctor. Jordan walked to the window, lifted the baby monitor from the sill, and set it on the coffee table. "You're not thinking clearly, Emma. You're projecting again." That word again, it was his weapon of choice. A ghost of something he'd said before. "I have legal custody," she said. "I have a judge's order." He shrugged. "No one's here to enforce it." Emma moved to the door again, rattled the knob. Still locked. "You need to open this door, Jordan. Now." He picked up the baby carrier, adjusted Mason's blanket. "He's safe. That's all I care about." Emma's voice cracked. "No, Jordan. That's what you want people to believe you care about, but you're not doing this for Mason. You're doing it for control." His expression shifted. Something cold settled behind his eyes. "I'm doing this because I've seen what happens when women like you unravel. You get praised for surviving, for fighting, but no one talks about the damage you leave behind. I'm cleaning up before that happens again." Emma took a step back. This wasn't concern. This was possession. Delusion. "You lied about me to the hospital. You used medical records to create a false history." Jordan didn't flinch. "Because you needed pressure to stabilize. You were spiraling. Stop calling it that. You didn't watch Mason cry alone? I did. You didn't sit through 4 blood transfusions and 2 emergency scans. I did. You weren't the one bleeding out at 28 weeks, praying he'd survive another day." For a moment, Jordan looked, almost moved. Almost. Then he said, "And yet, I'm the only one calm right now." "What does that tell you?" Emma stared at him. Then, slowly, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She tapped it twice, placing it on the windowsill in plain sight. "What's that?" Jordan asked. "Live stream to my sister and my lawyer." He hesitated. "I wasn't going to walk into a cabin with you without protection. I've been recording since you said melatonin." Keep going. Jordan's face drained of color. He moved quickly toward her, but Emma stepped back, bracing herself. From the side of the cabin, a voice called out. State police. Step away from the woman and place the child down now. Jordan froze. Emma turned just in time to see two officers moving up the steps. Weapons drawn. Her phone had never been streaming, but the call she placed just before arriving. That had been to 911. And her GPS was shared in real time. Jordan stared at her like he didn't recognize her anymore. You think you've won? I didn't come to win. I came to save my son. The officers rushed in, one pulling Emma gently back as the other took Mason from Jordan's arms. The baby let out a soft cry, a sound so small and beautiful it shattered Emma's composure. Tears streamed down her face. He was alive. He was okay. Jordan didn't fight. He just sat down on the cabin floor and looked up at the ceiling like he was waiting for something to collapse. Maybe it already had. That afternoon, in the emergency room, Mason was cleared for dehydration and mild hypothermia, but no long-term harm. The doctors said it was lucky he'd been found when he was ours later, and it might have been different. Emma sat beside his bed, holding his tiny hand. She didn't feel triumphant, she felt exhausted. But beneath that exhaustion, something new had taken root. Resolve, because it wasn't over. Not until the system that let this happen was exposed. Not until Jordan was held accountable. Not until every nurse who stayed silent faced the truth. That night, her lawyer called. He'll be arraigned in the morning. Unlawful removal, falsifying medical documents, child endangerment. You'll need to testify. Emma nodded, watching Mason sleep. I'll be ready. But just as she hung up, her phone buzzed again. A restricted number. She let it go to voicemail, then listened. A voice she didn't recognize. You don't know the whole story. There's another baby, another mother. Check the NICU records from 2019. Jordan wasn't acting alone. Emma replayed the voicemail 3 times before calling her lawyer. There's another baby, she said quietly. Another mother. 2019. Someone says Jordan wasn't working alone. The silence on the other end was brief but heavy. I'll file a motion to access NICU records from that year. We'll claim it under investigative relevance to your case. But Emma didn't wait. The next morning, she drove back to the hospital, with Mason safely in her arms, bundled tight, his breath warm against her skin. She requested a meeting with the NICU administrator. She came with everything: custody papers, court orders, medical records, and the weight of what she now knew. You need to open the 2019 files, she said. There was another case. Another premature baby. Jordan was involved, and he wasn't acting alone. At first, they resisted. Cited confidentiality, but the pressure of media inquiries already rising after Jordan's arrest and Emma's firm public accusation pushed them to relent. A day later, she was called back. They had found something. Baby girl L, born March 3, 2019, admitted for respiratory distress. Mother listed Caitlin Moore. Father not listed. Discharged at 12 days old under questionable conditions. No formal transfer order. No discharge signature from the mother. Instead, a note entered by a staff member who had since resigned. Father figure present. Authorized per Dr. W's oral direction. Emma leaned forward. Who's Dr. W? The administrator looked pale. Dr. Westlake. He retired last year. He was Jordan's godfather. Emma's breath caught. Dr. Westlake had vouched for Jordan. He'd helped him circumvent protocol, falsified proxy access, covered the gaps. It wasn't just Jordan manipulating the system, it was someone inside enabling him. What happened to the baby? Emma asked. We tried contacting the mother listed, but the number was disconnected. We don't know where she is. Emma stood, trembling with fury. You lost track of a premature baby. She was discharged legally. No, she was taken legally. That's different. Later that night, Emma went public. She posted a long detailed account on social media. The NICU neglect, the forged notes, the kidnapping, the 2019 baby. She included files, names, redacted records. She tagged hospital executives, journalists, women's advocacy groups. It exploded within 24 hours. Thousands of women had shared similar stories, being doubted, dismissed, overruled by systems designed to protect them, of concerned partners using the language of medicine to strip them of agency. Emma's inbox flooded, and then came the email she'd been waiting for. Subject: You don't know me, but I'm Caitlin Moore. The message was short. I saw your post. I'm the mother from 2019. I've been too afraid to come forward. They made me sign things I didn't understand. My daughter was taken. I was in recovery. I've never found her. Emma felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. She typed back immediately. I believe you. You're not alone. And we're going to fight this. In the days that followed, a formal investigation into the hospital was launched. A medical board convened. Former employees came forward with stories of policy loopholes, outdated security, misused discretion by physicians. Jordan's trial was set. Emma testified. Not just about what happened to Mason but what had happened before. What had been allowed to happen? What so many people refused to see. When the verdict came guilty on multiple counts, she didn't feel joy. She felt justice inch closer. Months passed. Mason grew stronger. His cheeks fuller, his eyes brighter. Emma still had nightmares sometimes, but they faded with each new milestone. His first real smile. The way his hand gripped hers. How he rested his head on her shoulder with complete trust. She joined a task force for NICU policy reform. Worked with Caitlin to help her reconnect with adoption records. Helped other mothers understand their rights. One morning, while feeding Mason, Emma received a message from a hospital rep. We've implemented mandatory dual parent verification. No more oral permissions. No more undocumented discharges. Your case changed everything. Emma smiled through tears. Mason blinked up at her, safe, loved, alive. She kissed his forehead. You did that, she whispered. You saved more than yourself. And across the country, another woman tired alone. Scared read Emma's story and decided to speak up, to fight to not stay silent. Because sometimes, the smallest voices barely more than a cry can shake the walls of institutions, and sometimes, it takes just one mother refusing to look away.